Chapter 4. The Rotten Part of INEC. For many years to come, Nigerians and indeed the whole world will continue to reminisce the ambiguity and contradictions that characterized the general elections in 2023 from the get-go. The warning signals of the systemic rot in the electoral process preceding the 2023 general elections started manifesting at the early stages of the presidential delegate primaries in May/June 2022. Then, INEC and indeed the federal government remained complacent over the massive vote buying and monetary inducement that characterized the entire process. The promises made by Professor Mahmood Yakubu, the INEC chairman, that the Commission will partner with Bolaji Oyesunoye, SAN, chairman of the Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Commission, ICPC, to prosecute party candidates who presented fake educational certificates and made false declarations, were empty threats, a fluke and mere rhetoric intended to placate those who were raising concerns about the need for investigations and proper scrutiny of party candidates. Even the promises by the Electoral Commission to work with the Inspector General of Police, Usman Alkali Baba, to ensure that the election was conducted under a free, fair, and violence-free process, turned out to be deceitful. The disappointing role the police played during the presidential and governorship elections, where they were seen publicly scuttling the voting process by engaging in ballot snatching and intimidation of voters who were presumed to be against the ruling party, is already a breach of public confidence. Scores of voters were harassed and beaten up, while several others were injured and many were even killed right under the watchful eyes of security personnel and military operatives all across the country, with several of these cases occurring in Lagos and Rivers states. Election Situation Room, an election monitoring group comprising Nigerian NGOs and CBOs, confirmed many cases of police brutality and thuggery during the polls, just as some of the video evidence shows, which inundates the social media space. All these misdemeanors goes to pay credence to the allegation that the allegiance of the security agencies were in support of the powers that be, whereas they ought to defend the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, of which sovereignty rests squarely on the people. The dishonorable role that the INEC presiding officers played during the presidential and governorship polls across the country did not only affirm that they indeed compromised the tenets of the INEC guidelines, but that they equally contradicted all the promises made by President Muhammadu Buhari that the election would be free and fair. One of the most unimaginable and absurd occurrences was the inexplicable and unholy alliance between INEC, thugs, and community leaders at the just concluded general election. These community chiefs unilaterally, and with impunity, relocated several polling stations from the INEC-approved polling units to an entirely new location, which were often in the frontage of their palaces, where thugs mounted sentry and many were seen roaming around, willfully assaulting and intimidating innocent voters, right in the presence of security operatives. Indeed, INEC, at a point wanted to engage the services of the Lagos Parks and Garages, which is chaired by one of Tinubu's acolyte in machinery, Musiliu Akinsanya, popularly known as MC Aliyamo, in the distribution of election materials and INEC ad hoc staff during the governorship polls in Lagos State. It took the intervention of Justice Chukwujekwu Anik of the Federal High Court in Lagos, who granted an injunction to restrain INEC, on February 20, 2023, following an application filed by Gbadebo Rhodes Viver, GRV, who is the Labour Party gubernatorial candidate. This is yet another of INEC's ubiquitous and unambiguous plots and show of shame that further demonstrated its unalloyed allegiance to the ruling party, and by extension, the machination of President Muhammadu Buhari's administration to perpetuate electoral fraud and smuggle his party's candidate, Ahmed Bola Tinubu, into power through the back door. Regardless that INEC did not only brag to use BVAS for the accreditation, verification and transmission of election results, it vowed to ensure that the electoral process was credible and flawless, just as is contained in Section 65 of the Electoral Act, which states that the presiding officer shall transfer the results including total number of accredited voters and the results of the ballot in a manner as prescribed by the Commission, but that was not the case and alas, it promised and failed. Severally, INEC had immersed itself in a public display of the highest level of incompetence as its presiding officers simultaneously and pretentiously assumed ignorance of the passwords of the BVAS devices with the purpose of intentionally sabotaging the election across the length and breadth of the country. It is quite appalling to find many supposedly highly educated die-hard bigots and opinionated public affairs analysts, who would sell their heart to the devil for a platter of porridge in defense of the unprofessional and shameless performance by the INEC chairman, Professor Yakubu, whose poor handling of the 2023 general elections is unarguably the worst election ever in the country. The big question that would bug the minds of every concerned Nigerian, which seeks for an urgent answer, is this: would the judgment of the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal and the Supreme Court be truly seen as incorruptible, honest, and fair to all parties concerned and acceptable by everyone, as well as settle the yearnings for a country governed by the rule of law and respect of the Constitution? Auspiciously, the reality of that question stares Nigerians rudely in their faces as both the Presidential Election Tribunal and the Supreme Court breached every known precedence law to confirm INEC's record-breaking Hugh Hour's declaration of Bola Ahmed Tinubu as the winner of the presidential election of February 25, 2023, while results were still being collated.